Did you know that Microsoft Azure offers us a lot of different logging possibilities? Yes, there's life beyond logging to Azure Application Insights. So in this video, we'll look into different possibilities that Microsoft Azure offers us, we'll compare them, and we'll implement them in an ASP.NET Core Web API, so stay tuned. Hey there and welcome back to the Code Wrinkles channel. Yeah, when it comes to logging, Microsoft Azure offers us a lot of different possibilities, and this gives us developers a lot of flexibility. I know most of us developers tend to always think about logging to Application Insights. However, do we really need to buy an expensive gaming PC just to watch Netflix? Our application come in different shapes and sizes with different requirements for logging, and therefore we need to also look into other options beyond Azure Application Insights. So when it comes to logging to Microsoft Azure, we would have as .NET developers three major and very important possibilities. Logging to the file system, logging to blob storage, and obviously logging using Application Insights. Logging to the file system is the most straightforward approach to logging when it comes to logging in your ASP.NET Core application and Microsoft Azure. And it gets you covered if you have very simple logging scenarios with very simple application, and it's really powerful when it comes to use logging for bug hunting, for instance. And implementing file system logging for your ASP.NET Core application that are hosted in an Azure App Service is very easy. First, we need to enable App Services logging to file system from the Azure portal. And to do this, we need to navigate down here to this App Service logs blade. And if we click on it, we have here different options, and during this video, we look through most of them. However, right now we want to enable this application logging to the file system. And here we have this log level. Here we can define a minimum log level. And for the purpose of this video, let's choose here information. So this means we will log all the logs that are for information and higher in our file system. And basically that's it. We can just click save and then we are done with that. So let's go now back to our application, and here I have a very basic setup. This is the standard template that we have in ASP.NET Core with this Azure weather forecast, or with this weather forecast controller. And here in this weather forecast controller, I just have added this logger log information and getting forecast. And that's the log that we will actually look for in our different logging systems or logging providers that we will play around during this video. So the next thing that we need to take care about is to manage the dependencies, and it is Microsoft Extensions Logging Azure App Services and Microsoft Extensions Logging App Insights. So these are the two NuGet packages that you need to install. I have already installed them for convenience. The next thing that we need to do is obviously to configure logging providers for the file system. The first thing that we need to do to achieve this is to add this Add Azure App Diagnostics. And this will add the entire Azure Application Services diagnostics that will enable us to perform logging to different targets. And there's nothing easier than to configure it, and it would be something like this. We have Builder Services Configure, so we just configure this options pattern here for the Azure File Logger options. And here we just have to provide a few pieces of information, like what is the name of our log file, and this is, let's say, a prefix, because we'll see a little bit later the date for the specific log file will be added after this dash, then the file size limit, and how long do we want to retain some files. Before we run this application, there is, however, one last thing that I would like to configure. The problem with logging to file system is that if we leave everything as default, it will log also a lot of stuff from Microsoft ASP.NET Core, Microsoft hosting, and usually when we want to have file logging, when we want to be very scoped to the logs that we generate, we want to avoid that. So what I'll do here, I'll come here to this apps.index.json, and in this logging object, I will configure log levels for this provider for Microsoft. It should be none. So it means that as long as we're using this Azure App Services file logging provider, everything that comes from the Microsoft should be of log level none, and it should be ignored, plainly ignored. And now we can go to the next step and deploy this application to Azure, and we'll come back then to make some requests and see exactly how or where can we see those logs. The application should be live now, so let's navigate to our application and go to the Swagger documentation. And here let's just perform a few requests. Try it out, execute, let's execute again, and by now we should have enough information. Obviously, the next question that you might have is, okay, but where can we actually access these files and see these logs? Here we have these advanced tools, and here we have a URL, and if we click on it, a new browser window will open. Let's make sure that I choose the account for which I am also logged in with the subscription, and then we have this type of environment. This is the Kudu workspace, let's call it like that. And here, to be able to go to the file, we need to go to the debug console and choose either PowerShell or CMD. And the thing is that here now we can navigate through the different folders that we have on our file system on the web server. So if we go to log files and the application folder, and in this application folder, you'll see that I have already two different log files. One is from yesterday when I kind of like ran some tests, and you can just simply click on download. And if we look at this, we see that in this application or in this log file, we just logged the information that we wanted. So we have made 3 requests, and therefore we have here 3 times getting forecasts, and getting forecasts. Logging to file system, however, has a very important drawback. It logs to the file system of the web server where your application is hosted. And this means in turn that your logging system will compete for computational resources with your application. And this might not be very optimal, for instance, if you're running an application on a very low pricing tier in Microsoft Azure. But to get you covered in this scenario, there is another approach to logging, and this is logging to blob storage. To enable logging to Azure Blob Storage, we need to come back to our App Services Logs blade, and we need to configure this type of logging. So what we need to do is set this on application logging blob, and here we can provide some configuration. The first one, as we had previously, we can have a minimum log level, and I'll set this to information, but then we have to also configure a storage container. Now for me, there is only one storage container created, but if you do this for the first time, here you will just see a 0. But if you click on this 0, because it's a new URL, you will go through the exact same process that I go right now. So first of all, we need to add a storage account, or to define a storage account to which we want to do these logs. Now, if you don't have already a storage account created, you can obviously go here and create storage account. But I already have this storage account created, and within this storage account, I already have a container where I want to put my logs. So I just need to choose that container and click select, and everything is right now configured. The last thing that you can configure for your logging provider for Azure Blob is the retention period for your log files. And I have set this to 30 days, so I want my log files to be kept for 30 days. So let's click save on here, and then we would be good to go with this one. So let's move back to our Rider instance. Here, since we already added this Azure Web App Diagnostics, we can just simply come and add another iOptions pattern configuration to configure our Azure Blob Logger options. And the only thing that we provide here as a configuration name is the blob name, and I want it to be a log.txt. So now, obviously, as we did for the file system provider, we don't want in these files to have all the logs that are generated by Microsoft or by ASP.NET Core. So I'll go back to this appsettings.json file, see exactly where this configuration finishes, and I would add a configuration for this Azure App Service Blob provider, in which I say that the log level for the category log of Microsoft should be none. And now we are ready. I will deploy this application to Azure, and once it's deployed, we'll get back to it, run some requests, and take a look at what is generated on our Azure storage account. Our application should be up by now, so let's go here back to the Swagger. Let's just refresh this, and let's execute here some requests. Let's say 1, 2, and 3. Now we can go back to our Azure portal, and I will navigate resource group, and this resource group I have here the storage account, and on this storage account I will go to the containers, and as you see here I have this container my logs where this Azure App Service is supposed to play the logs that I have. And what we'll see here is that this logging provider generates us a certain folder structure so that it is easy for us to locate a certain logs by date. So first of all, we have the year, and then we have the month, which is April in this case, and then we have the day. I have also played around with this yesterday when preparing for this video, but right now what we did for those requests, it should be in this 9, and here you can also see that you have folders for each hour. So I just have recently sent those requests, so it should be at 7, this is GMT obviously. And here if we go to this log file, we have this option to download it. And once we download it, we can just start it, and you see that we have the exact same level of information. We have 3 times this getting forecasts, and getting forecasts. A lot of people probably disconsider this type of logging features that Microsoft Azure offers us. However, my experience shows that it proved it very useful and effective in a lot of different scenarios. Let's imagine, for instance, that you need to troubleshoot a problem, a certain bug, and you would like to reproduce that and see exactly what happens in your application at that point. Now, the very powerful thing about logs in application services is that you can actually configure and look into a live stream of logging. So you can have a real-time look into the logs generated by your application. So you might go to a certain request or to a certain flow that you want to reproduce, just make those requests, and you can in real time watch in the log stream what exactly is generated. And this saves you a lot of time, for instance, on searching for logs, for appropriate logs in ApplicationInsights or more complex logging systems. So let me show you how this works. We are here back to our Azure web app and back to this monitoring section of the different blades that we have in this Azure App Service configuration. And the important thing here is that once we have this app service logs enabled, it could be either one of them, so for the file system, or it could be for blob storage. But once we enable one of them, if we go here to this log stream, you will see that we will get a console, and in this console we will get a live or real-time live stream of our logs that are generated by the application. And now we are connected to this live stream session. So let's go here to the Swagger UI and let's try to execute this and execute this and execute this. Now let's go back, and guess what? You can see this here in real time. And that's obviously very easy. I use this a lot when it comes to debugging, or when we have some bugs or things that we don't really understand exactly how that happened. I always come here and I tend to enable this type of logging, go to this log stream, perform a request, and see exactly what gets logged into this console. It's obviously much easier, as you will see, than just go and try to find your way through different queries, through lots of queries in Azure ApplicationInsights. There are, however, also more complex scenarios or more complex logging requirements for more complex systems. In those cases, obviously logging to the file system or logging to blob storage is not enough. And in that case, logging to ApplicationInsights is really the option to go. Obviously, ApplicationInsights is not a tool that's dedicated to logging only. In fact, ApplicationInsights is a very complex tool built as an extension on the Azure Monitor, and it offers you a lot of very powerful monitoring and instrumentation capabilities. However, in this video, we will concentrate only on the logging part of it. To perform logging to ApplicationInsights, we need first of all a connection string for our ApplicationInsights instance. So I will go here to my ApplicationInsights service, and then I'll navigate to this properties blade that we have here. And in this property blade, you'll see that we have this connection string. So we need to make sure that we copy this connection string because we need to use it in app settings.json. First of all, let's add the connection string for our Azure ApplicationInsights, which would be this one. And then we can go back to our program class and finalize the configuration for ApplicationInsights. Logging to ApplicationInsights is as easy as just providing a simple configuration here. We can use builder logging. So on the logging part, we want to add ApplicationInsights. Now, add ApplicationInsights is part of this Microsoft extensions logging.ApplicationInsights. And if you call this method, you just need to provide here some name parameters for these two configuration actions, like configure telemetry configuration. And here we just provide the connection string. We leave everything on default. And then you also need to provide this configure ApplicationInsights logger options. But here we want to also leave everything the default. So in order to be able to call this method, we still need to provide this, but we don't really want to further configure this at this certain point. There's really not anything else to it, so we can just deploy the application, and I'll come back once the application is deployed. Okay, our application is live right now. Let's make sure to refresh it so that we have the brand new deployment here. And while it is refreshing, we can already go back here and we'll go to our ApplicationInsights. And here under ApplicationInsights, we look for this blade called logs. Let's first of all make a few requests here. So get right out. Let's make 3 requests, 1, 2, and 3. Now, ApplicationInsights, as I mentioned earlier, is a very complex tool. And the complexity also comes from the part that it is an extension to Azure Monitor, and therefore if you want to query for logs, you need to use this custom query language. That's the name of the query language that Azure uses to perform lookups for certain logs. Now this KQL is a different beast on its own. But what we can do here, the logs that we log or from our application to application insights are usually logged against this traces table. So what I'll do here is I want to run all traces for a limit of 100. So I want to see all the logs. And here I will also want to configure a time range. I don't want 24 hours, but I only want the last 30 minutes. And let's then run this query. And as you can see here, we have a lot of different requests, or a lot of different things are logged, but we have here this getting forecasts, and also the third time getting forecasts. All the other stuff was logged because it's logged by Microsoft ASP.NET Core or by Microsoft Hosting. And remember that for Application Insights, we haven't configured our logging so that it ignores this log. As you see, logging to Application Insights is very powerful, but it requires a lot more effort and also knowledge of this custom query language that Application Insights are using. So I would say that this is really optimal if you need some more complex monitoring and instrumentation scenarios, or even setting up alerts on different events that happen in your application. But using this approach to logging for bug hunting purposes might not be the best way to go. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and like it so that you make it easier to discover for others. And if you are for the first time on the channel, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you are always notified when there is something new on this channel. And if you have any question or just want to get in touch with me, don't be shy and head over to the comment section of this video and drop me a line or two, and I'd be more than happy to get in touch with you. This being said, thank you very much for watching, and until the next time, I wish you the very best.